Hi, boys and girls. Today we are going to read about some Native American tribes that lived in the desert regions of California. If you look back at the map that we created a while ago, you can see that the desert region is way over here on the southeast side of the state of California. And we know we can think about the desert and think about what the desert here in California is like. And I want you to keep that in mind as we read about the Native Americans that lived in the desert region. You and your mother have been walking for several days. You think of your grandmother who stayed behind in your village at the foot of the Santa Rosa Mountains. Though home in the desert seems far away, you know it's important to reach areas in which oak trees grow so that you can gather enough acorns to feed your family through the winter. Adjusting the carrying net attached to your headband, you hurry to keep up with the others. Kauia, Kauia. Fewer people lived in the desert region than in other regions of California. Food was harder to find there, and people were always trying to hunt enough animals or to gather enough food to eat. They often spent part of the year in nearby mountain areas where they gathered food and other resources. Some desert groups farmed and raised corn, beans, and squash. Among the groups that lived in the desert region were the Kauia. Their land stretched from the San Bernardino Mountains across the valleys of the San Jacinto and Santa Rosa Mountains. They included the foothills and the desert areas at the base of the mountains. The Kauia often built their villages in canyons near streams or springs. At springs, water flowed through openings in the ground. In some areas, high canyon walls provided shade and protected the villages from strong winds. Each year during acorn gathering seasons, large number of Kauia Indians left their villages to gather acorns. At other times of the year, the Kauia gathered cactus, mesquite beans, screw beans, and pinon nuts. Take a look, boys and girls, at the pictures and your captions and the map that go along with the reading that we are doing right now. Okay. I have to keep going back and looking at how to pronounce that. It's the Kauia. The Kauia built their houses out of brush. Some houses were dome-shaped, others were rectangular. The Kauia built the largest houses for their village leaders and for special ceremonies. Like other California Indians, the Kauia held ceremonies to celebrate important events. During these ceremonies, they wore special feathered headdresses, shook rattles, and performed dances and songs. Mountains and deserts separated the Kauia from other Indian groups. Still, the Kauia traded with each other, with neighboring groups and with groups who lived farther away. Their most important trading partners were the Serrano, who lived in the north, and the Gabrielina, who lived to the west. Among the goods traded were shell beads, furs, and baskets. The Kauia also traded something that most other California Indians did not make: clay pots. They made these pots by coiling ropes of clay and then smoothing the sides. After the pots dried, they painted some of them. The Kauia used the pots for cooking as well as for storing food and water. The Mojave. The Mojave Indians lived east of the Kauia Indians in the desert lands near the Colorado River. Not many plants or trees grow in this arid or dry land. Large animals are also scarce there. To survive in such a harsh environment, the Mojave developed ways of life very different from those of most other tribes in what is now California. The Mojave built homes that protected them in the desert climate. In summer, they made open-sided, flat-topped shelters so that the wind could cool them. In the winter, they made walls of logs and arrowweeds. They then covered the walls and the roofs with mud to make them strong. Families built basket granaries on platforms to store the food through the winter. They also made clay pots for storing food and water and for cooking. The Colorado River was the most important source of water for the Mojave. It allowed them to grow some crops in the desert. Every spring, snow in the Rocky Mountains melted, causing water levels to rise. in the rivers to rise. Some years, the Colorado River overflowed and left a layer of silt along its banks. Silt is fine grains of soil and rock. The Mojave grew corn, beans, melons, and pumpkins in this rich soil. The Mojave did not get all their food from agriculture or farming. Women gathered seeds, cactus fruits, and mesquite beans. These foods were especially important when crops were poor due to drought. Men fished in the Colorado River and hunted small animals such as rabbits, raccoons, and rattlesnakes. And be sure you look at those text features. And you can even go over here and you can look at what the California Indians are like today. The Mojave got most of what they needed from the lands around them. Like the Cahuilla, however, the Mojave sometimes traveled to gather food. At different times of the year, they went where they could find berries and nuts. For the Mojave, the desert made travel and trade difficult. Still, they are known to have traveled all the way to the Pacific coast to trade. Mojave traders sometimes ran most of the way. And here is another picture here for you to look at. All right, boys and girls, answer the questions on the next slide. Do your best. If you need to listen to this lesson read again, please push play again, or you can read it independently.